Imagine walking into a grand ornate concert hall. You sit down, the lights dim, and the conductor raises his baton.
Right, that moment of total anticipation.
Exactly. 100 world-class musicians raise their instruments. You've got, violins, cellos, trumpets, oboes. The baton drops. And then every single musician plays one single, deafening, unyielding middle C for an entire hour.
Oh, wow. Which would just be awful.
It would be a nightmare. That isn't a symphony, it's an alarm.
Yeah, you'd demand a refund immediately.
Right, because it's monotonous, it lacks depth, and after about 3 minutes, you would be running for the exits. Yet, strangely, when we look at the landscape of human division, when we look at how we try to solve geopolitical conflicts or cultural clashes, that is exactly what humanity keeps trying to do to itself. We look at the sheer noise and friction of the world, and our instinct is to demand that everyone just play the exact same note.
We really do operate under this persistent illusion that unity requires sameness. We look at a geopolitical dispute or, deep systemic inequalities, and we apply an engineering mindset. We try to find the broken gear, extract it, and force the machine back into a uniform rhythm.
Right, like we're fixing a clock.
Exactly. But when you are dealing with identity, with history, with fundamental human belief, you aren't dealing with gears in a machine. You are dealing with the messy, vital, intensely complicated human condition.
Which is exactly why today's deep dive is taking a completely different approach. We are unpacking a single, profoundly compelling, short philosophical text by an author known as Reverend P.S.
And I love this source material because it's so unexpected.
It really is. I mean, this isn't a dense academic paper. It isn't a 500-page, data-heavy sociological report.
My goodness.
Right. It is a brief, highly poetic meditation on the human condition that manages to explain the entire arc of our existence, from, absolute unity to the fractured state we live in today, and ultimately to a surprisingly practical framework for healing.
The author accomplishes all of this by utilizing one extended, powerful metaphor. And that is the metaphor of light passing through a prism.
It's such a great visual.
It is. And the beauty of this specific metaphor is that it allows us to bypass the defensive walls we naturally throw up when discussing heavily charged topics, like race, religion, or nationalism.
Because usually the second you bring those up, people just shut down.
Exactly. It provides a shared, visually intuitive language to explore territory that usually triggers immediate tribal defensiveness.
So, to you listening right now, have you ever felt entirely overwhelmed by how divided the world seems? By the endless categories, the rigid labels, the constant exhausting friction of just turning on the news?
It's exhausting for everyone.
It really is. Well, this deep dive is a shortcut to a radically different perspective. And the most beautiful part of the text we are exploring today is that it doesn't ask you to erase your unique identity.
Right. It doesn't ask you to blend into a gray, futureless crowd.
Not at all. Instead, it reveals why your specific unique identity is actually the ultimate proof of our fundamental shared connection. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it. So, if we are going to understand how humanity became so intensely fractured, we have to establish what this text claims we originally were.
We have to go back to the beginning.
The absolute beginning. Before the division. Before the colors even existed. The text posits a pre-Prism state. It states that at the origin point of all things, there was one source.
One source.
Singular, whole, complete, undivided, and in perfect harmony with itself.
The exact phrasing the text uses is pure light before it touches the prism. And what stops me in my tracks is how the author defines that pure light.
It's not what you'd expect.
No. It isn't described as a dead, empty void. It isn't just blank white space. The text claims this original living essence carried very specific attributes: love, wisdom, creativity, purpose, and the power to express life in many beautiful ways.
We need to pause on that list because it fundamentally reframes human evolution. Well, in a purely materialist worldview, we tend to think of traits like love or wisdom or purpose as, late-stage evolutionary adaptations.
Right, like we developed them to survive.
Exactly. We view them as neurological software developed over millions of years by social primates to ensure group survival. But in the framework of this text, those attributes are not acquired.
Wait, really? They aren't something we learned?
No, they are the baseline ingredients of existence. They are the fundamental physics of reality before any human division or even human biology takes place.
Man, that requires a massive shift in perspective, to conceptualize purpose or creativity existing before physical form.
It breaks your brain a little bit.
It does. We are so conditioned to believe that you need a biological brain, a physical body, and an environment to interact with in order to possess creativity. But this text is arguing that creativity is the primary substance. It is the light itself.
It is the animating force preceding the material universe.
Think about the physics of actual light for a second. Imagine a perfectly pure beam of white light traveling through the total vacuum of deep space.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
If you are floating off to the side, looking at the space that beam is traveling through, you literally cannot see it.
Right, because there's nothing for it to bounce off of.
Exactly. Light is completely invisible in a vacuum unless it shines directly into your eye. To be perceived from the outside, that beam of light has to strike something. It has to hit a cloud of cosmic dust, or a planetary atmosphere, or a physical object.
It requires an obstacle to become visible.
Yes, it requires resistance. And that physical reality perfectly mirrors the philosophical problem the text introduces next.
Right, because if this original source is overflowing with creativity and purpose, as the text claims, it faces a dilemma. Pure potential in a vacuum is essentially useless.
Totally.
Creativity requires a medium. It requires resistance. You cannot paint a masterpiece without a canvas to stop the brush.
So, did this original source need an obstacle? Did it need to hit something in order to fully express that pent-up creativity?
What's fascinating here is that the author explicitly states this living essence carried the power to express life in many beautiful ways.
Keyword being many.
That specific phrasing heavily implies that the singular undivided state of pure white light was never the ultimate end goal. It was pregnant with the desire for diverse expression.
The capacity for many was built into the one from the very beginning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But as you pointed out, the pure light couldn't express many ways while remaining an unbroken beam in a vacuum. It required a mechanism of refraction.
It needed a canvas. It needed an obstacle. And that brings us to the hinge upon which this entire philosophy turns, the introduction of the prism.
The text introduces the prism not as a mistake or a tragedy, but as a structural necessity.
Right.
But the author doesn't leave the prism as a vague, esoteric concept. We were given an incredibly dense, revealing list of what this prism actually represents in the context of human experience.
Let me read this list directly from the text, because the scope of it is staggering. The author writes that the prism represents form, identity, experience, culture, memory, language, tribe, race, religion, nation, gender, family, pain, history, and ego.
That is quite the list.
It covers literally everything.
If you categorize that list, you're essentially looking at the complete architecture of human existence. You have the massive external structural containers: nation, tribe, race, culture, language, gender, religion, family.
The things you're usually born into.
Exactly. These are the demographic realities we were born into, the structures that immediately begin shaping us the moment we take our first breath.
But the text doesn't stop at demographics. It moves into the deeply personal temporal realities, like form, the literal reality of possessing a biological body that ages and degrades, memory and history, the inescapable weight of the past.
And then it makes a devastating pivot and includes profound internal psychological states. It explicitly lists pain and ego alongside things like nation and language.
Yeah, that part really caught me off guard.
The grouping is highly intentional. The author is equalizing all of these elements as refracting surfaces.
And this is where we have to really wrestle with the text. Because when we normally think of a prism, we picture a neutral piece of polished glass sitting on a physics teacher's desk.
Right, just a clear, cold object.
Exactly. But this text is taking pain, the trauma, the suffering, the psychological agony of human life, and categorizing it as part of that prism. So, to you listening, are we supposed to read this and conclude that human suffering isn't an anomaly?
That's the implication, yeah.
Does this imply that pain isn't a glitch in the cosmic system, but an inherent, necessary layer of reality required to bend our spiritual light?
Well, we spend the vast majority of our lives trying to eradicate pain. We view it as a failure of our biology, a failure of our society, or a failure of our own choices.
Of course we do. It hurts.
But the physics of a literal prism offer a profound way to understand what the text is doing here. How does a glass prism actually create colors?
Well, it slows the light down, right?
It does so through density. Glass is denser than air. When light hits that dense medium, it slows down. Because the light wave hits the glass at an angle, One side of the wave slows down before the other, which causes the path of the light to physically bend.
So refraction literally requires density.
Exactly. So apply that to the metaphor. The pure, frictionless light of the source, that original love, wisdom, and creativity encounters the immense, terrifying density of the human experience.
Oh, wow.
It hits the density of our history. It hits the density of biological form. It hits the profound, sluggish density of human trauma and ego. And just like light hitting glass, it slows down, it bends.
And the text states that the light passes through these layers. They are the medium, not the source.
Right. Your pain, your nationality, your ego, they are the dense glass that bends the singular essence of who you are into a specific visible reality.
The light hits the density of the prism, it bends, and the inevitable result is the birth of color. The spectrum emerges.
Now we arrive at a critical juncture where this text sharply diverges from many historical and religious philosophies.
How so?
Well, in countless traditions throughout human history, the moment humanity enters into physical form, the moment we are divided into genders, nations, and individual egos, complete with suffering, it is framed as a cosmic tragedy.
Right. It's the fall from grace. It's the original sin. It's the idea that we were perfectly unified spirits who somehow messed up and were cast down into this dirty, painful, divided material world as a punishment.
But this text forcefully rejects that premise. The author writes a definitive, uncompromising claim, quote, "Diversity was not the fall. Difference was not the mistake. The problem did not begin because many colors were formed," end quote.
I cannot overstate how liberating that concept is.
It really is.
If diversity is not a mistake, it means each specific color, each distinct identity that emerges from the prism is not a fractured, broken piece of the light.
No, it is the light.
It is just the light expressing itself at a very specific wavelength.
Think about the electromagnetic spectrum. Red light is not in opposition to blue light. Yellow is not inherently superior to green. They are literally the exact same photons, just oscillating at different frequencies because of how they bent through the prism.
That's a great way to put it.
The text emphasizes that these human concepts of hierarchy, the idea that one race or one nation or one gender is closer to the source than another, they just do not exist at the foundational level of reality.
The author writes, every race is a tone of the same song. Every language is a different sound of the same breath, which brings us right back to that symphony hall we started in.
Right, where everyone was playing middle C.
Exactly. A symphony requires the different notes to exist simultaneously. If you erase the differences, you destroy the harmony. The harmony the text talks about isn't achieved by throwing a white sheet over the orchestra and demanding they all play the same note.
It is achieved when the C, the E, and the G all ring out clearly at the same time.
Yes, to create a chord that none of them could produce alone.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the text is constructing a cosmic validation of diversity. It completely dismantles the idea that spiritual or societal unity requires assimilation.
Which is how unity is usually pitched to us.
Exactly. But here, to destroy the color of another human being, to force them to abandon their specific expression of identity, would be to literally vandalize the beautiful expression of the original source.
Okay, here is where I have to play devil's advocate, though.
Go for it.
If the light was perfectly harmonious, and the prism is a necessary canvas, and the resulting colors are a beautiful, intended symphony, why does looking out at the world feel like looking at a war zone?
That is the big question.
If difference wasn't the mistake, what caused the broken, bleeding state of humanity? What went wrong?
The author pivots from the physics of light to the psychology of humanity here. If the creation of color wasn't the problem had to arise in how the colors perceive themselves.
Okay.
The text states that the fracturing of humanity began with a profound psychological shift, the descent into forgetfulness.
The text says, humanity became attached to the prism and forgot the light.
We need to dissect this concept of forgetfulness because it is the absolute bedrock of the author's diagnosis of human conflict. Notice what is absent from this explanation.
Like demons or evil spirits.
Exactly. The text doesn't claim that humanity was corrupted by a demonic force.
Right.
It doesn't argue that we are inherently biologically evil. It diagnoses our global crisis as a tragic systemic amnesia.
We move from remembrance to forgetfulness.
We just forgot.
But how exactly does that happen? How does a color just forget it is made of light? Is it a moral failing? Or is it because the prism we are passing through, the physical world, the daily grind of survival, the intense, searing reality of physical pain and historical trauma, is just so loud and demanding that it monopolizes our entire consciousness?
That is precisely the mechanism the text implies.
Yeah.
The elements of the prism are incredibly dense and captivating.
Yeah, pain is pretty distracting.
To say the least. When you are deeply immersed in form, when you are struggling to feed your family, when your nation is under attack, when your physical body is in agony, it requires a nearly impossible level of presence to look past those immediate sharp realities and remember your intangible metaphysical origin.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about how this operates in your own life. It is staggeringly easy to become obsessed with the glass of the prism.
Oh, absolutely.
We become completely attached to the mechanisms that define us. The text says we became attached to labels, territories, possessions, doctrines, status, fear, and control.
We fall so deeply in love with the specific shape of our glass that we forget we're only visible because of the light passing through it.
The tragedy outlined here is profound. We were meant to use our differences to reveal the limitless beauty of the one. Instead, we started defending the color. We started weaponizing the refraction.
Defending the color. That is the perfect summary of almost every geopolitical crisis, cultural war, and interpersonal conflict happening right now.
It really is. And the text doesn't speak in abstractions here. It gives us a chillingly accurate diagnosis of what this forgetfulness sounds like.
It lists actual quotes.
Yeah, it provides 5 specific utterances, the literal voices of a divided humanity. Let's look at these because they perfectly map onto our world. The first voice of division says, "I am greater than you."
This is the voice of pure ego, the illusion of hierarchy. In the metaphor of the spectrum, it is one frequency of light deciding that its specific wavelength is objectively superior to another.
Which physics-wise makes 0 sense.
Not at all. It is a fundamental failure to understand that both the greater and the lesser are generated by the exact same source. The ego requires comparison to exist. It feeds on the illusion of separation.
Then the second voice says, "You do not look like me, so you cannot be part of me."
Tribalism and exclusion. This taps into deeply ingrained evolutionary psychology.
Right, in-group versus out-group.
Exactly. Our brains are hardwired to rapidly categorize the world into in-group and out-group based on visual and cultural markers. But the text frames this biological reflex as a spiritual amnesia.
Because it's judging the ultimate source of a person by the superficial shape of the prism they happen to be passing through.
It is mistaking the glass for the light.
Then we have the third voice. "My way of worshiping the source is the only true way."
Religious dogma. This utterance is particularly tragic within the framework of the text because it involves weaponizing the concept of the source to actively block access to the source.
It's the ultimate irony. You are taking a tiny, refracted, deeply localized sliver of understanding about the divine, and you are arrogant enough to declare that your sliver is the entire unbent beam of light.
You are looking at a rainbow and screaming that only red is light and blue is a heresy.
Wow, yes, and that leads directly to the fourth voice. "My nation must rise, even if yours must fall."
Nationalism, zero-sum thinking.
It's terrifying because it's so common.
It is the geopolitical manifestation of the amnesia. It is the absolute terrifying conviction that there is a finite amount of light in the universe, a finite amount of validity, safety, and worth.
And under the rules of a zero-sum game, for my color to be bright, yours must be actively extinguished.
It reduces the infinite creative source into a scarce resource that must be hoarded through violence.
And that brings us to the fifth voice. I want you to really listen to this one, because when I read it, I had to put the text down and walk away for a minute.
It's heavy.
Very. The text says, the fifth voice of division says, "My pain gives me the right to wound you."
It is an incredibly heavy, piercing observation.
It is the most profound line in the entire piece. "My pain gives me the right to wound you." Think about what that explains.
Everything.
It explains generational conflict. It explains the endless cycles of war in the Middle East, in Eastern Europe, in every corner of the globe where history is written in blood. It explains the interpersonal toxicity in our own families. Hurt people hurt people.
It perfectly articulates the cycle of trauma. But we have to link it back to the metaphor to truly understand its weight. Remember earlier, the author explicitly identified pain as a fundamental part of the prism.
Right. Pain is one of the dense layers the light passes through.
So what happens when a person or a culture becomes completely consumed by their amnesia? They stop identifying as the light. They identify entirely with the prism. They identify entirely with their pain.
And when you believe that you are your pain, what do? You take that sharp, shattered piece of glass and you use it as a weapon to cut someone else.
You weaponize the prism. When you forget that you are the light passing through the trauma, you become convinced that your only function in the world is to inflict the trauma you have experienced.
It's like a twisted sense of purpose.
Exactly. You reclaim a false sense of agency by becoming the abuser. It is the absolute nadir of the forgetfulness described in the text. You are no longer expressing the love or wisdom of the source. You're just endlessly, blindly repeating the distortion of the dense glass.
It is a devastatingly accurate psychological profile of humanity. And the terrifying part is that these 5 voices, ego, tribalism, dogma, nationalism, and weaponized trauma, didn't just remain isolated, fleeting thoughts in the minds of individuals.
No, they became foundational.
According to the text, we took these voices and we used them as blueprints. We built our entire global society upon them.
This brings us to the architecture of separation, the institutionalization of our spiritual amnesia.
The author writes, "We built systems around separation. We taught generations to inherit old wounds. We turned identity into a weapon, religion into competition, leadership into domination, and knowledge into pride."
The active verbs in that passage are vital to understanding the author's critique. We built, we taught, we turned.
It wasn't an accident.
No, the forgetfulness didn't just passively happen to us. We became active engineers of our own division. We codified the amnesia into law, into culture, into economics. Let's look at the specific inversions the text lists.
Okay, first one, religion into competition.
If the source was originally marked by perfect harmony and love, then religion, the human attempt to connect with that source, should be a collaborative shared exploration.
Like climbing a mountain together.
Exactly. Instead, under the influence of the forgetfulness, it becomes a desperate race to be right. It becomes a competition for divine real estate, where winning requires proving everyone else is damned.
Then we have leadership into domination.
True leadership, within the context of the spectrum metaphor, would involve a conductor guiding the various colors to harmonize.
Bringing out the best in the symphony.
It would be about facilitating the symphony. But when leadership is infected by ego and zero-sum thinking, it degrades into domination. It becomes about violently suppressing certain hues in order to artificially elevate your own.
And finally, knowledge into pride.
This is a subtle but incredibly insidious shift. The intellect, the capacity to learn and understand, is a reflection of the wisdom that was one of the original attributes of the pure light. But in a state of amnesia, knowledge is stripped of wisdom. It becomes a tool of the ego. It is used to construct more sophisticated weapons, to build higher walls, and to intellectually justify our prejudices, rather than being used to foster deeper connection.
We have literally built a massive, complex, heavily defended global architecture based entirely on a misunderstanding of our own physics.
It's tragic.
It is. But this raises a really practical question. The text says we teach generations to inherit old wounds. The transmission of this division requires active teaching. So does this imply that the separation is actually unnatural to our base state? Like if we somehow manage to just stop teaching the amnesia, would a new generation naturally revert to remembering the light?
This raises an important question about the fundamental resilience of human nature within this framework. If the original state was harmony, then the division is an artificial construct.
It's a learned behavior.
Right. It requires an immense continuous expenditure of energy to maintain. You have to actively socialize a child to hate another race or fear another nation.
That's a really good point.
The text asserts a fundamental, unbreakable law of physics that underpins this entire philosophy. Yet the truth remains, no color can exist without the light.
You literally cannot have the red wavelength without the underlying energy of the photon.
Exactly. So no matter how tall the walls of separation we build, no matter how deeply entrenched the zero-sum nationalism or the religious violence becomes, the underlying truth of our unity remains completely intact beneath all the man-made wreckage.
The light is still the light, even if the colors are screaming at each other in the dark.
The source is untouched by the amnesia.
Which brings us to the ultimate turning point of the text. The author has diagnosed the root of humanity's bleeding as a systemic, inherited forgetfulness, but we are not left in despair. The text provides a cure that directly addresses the mechanism of the disease.
Well, if the illness is forgetfulness, the only logical cure is remembrance.
The text states, so the healing of humanity is not in destroying our differences, it is in remembering their origin.
This requires a massive cognitive and emotional paradigm shift. It is a complete rejection of the zero-sum worldview that governs our current global architecture. The text explicitly outlines what happens when this remembrance takes root.
It says, when we remember we came from one source, we stop seeing another person's expansion as a threat. We stop fearing another people's beauty. We stop needing to reduce others to feel important.
Because if you truly internalize the mechanics of the prism metaphor, you realize that the expansion of one color does not and physically cannot diminish the light.
It just reveals more of it.
It actually reveals more of the source's inherent creativity. If my neighbor's color shines brighter, it doesn't plunge me into darkness.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? You are navigating a world that constantly screams at you to pick a side, to fortify your demographic bunker, to view everyone outside your specific color as an existential threat.
It's a lot of pressure.
It is. What this text offers is an escape hatch from that exhausting reality. It means that achieving peace doesn't require you to surrender your culture, your history, or your unique identity.
You don't have to erase yourself.
Exactly. It simply requires you to recognize that before you were your nationality, before you were your political affiliation, before you were your gender or your religion, you were pure potential. You were an expression of that singular creative source.
It is a radically liberating framework. It removes the necessity for competition at the existential level. Their vibrant red just makes the overall spectrum brighter, harmonizing perfectly with your vibrant blue, provided both of you recognize the single breath animating the song.
Humanity's problems began with forgetfulness. Humanity's healing begins with remembrance. That is the core beating heart of this text.
We must remember that if the source was in perfect harmony with itself from the beginning, then our highest possible calling is to return to that harmony.
Not by fading into a monotonous gray sameness, but by actively, consciously recognizing the exact same light animating every single unique color we encounter.
It demands that we hold two seemingly contradictory truths at once. We are profoundly, beautifully different, and we are absolutely fundamentally identical. The metaphor of the prism provides a cohesive lens that dignifies our differences while demanding our absolute unity.
We have covered massive ground today.
We really have.
We started in the vacuum of space, looking at humanity's origins as a single, harmonious light, pulsing with love and purpose. We watched that pure potential hit the incredibly dense, multifaceted prism of human experience, our physical forms, our cultures, our egos, and our deep generational pain.
We witnessed the beautiful, necessary birth of the diverse spectrum of colors.
But then we traced the tragedy, our descent into amnesia. We saw how our attachment to the sharp edges of the prism caused us to forget our shared origin, leading us to weaponize our identities and build massive global institutions dedicated to maintaining the illusion of separation.
And finally, we arrived at the profound, quiet realization that healing isn't an engineering problem, it is an act of memory.
It is the simple, incredibly difficult task of remembering who we were before the glass bent us.
Beautifully said.
So as we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final, highly practical challenge based on the philosophy we've just unpacked.
I love a good challenge.
We started by talking about how easy it is to view the world as a broken machine, looking for the specific gear to blame. This text demands a different diagnostic tool.
Okay.
So try this. Think about the person, the political party, or the group of people that you feel most viscerally opposed to right now. The people who represent the absolute, terrifying opposite of your color. The people you feel totally justified in despising.
Oh, that's tough.
It is. But according to the rigorous logic of this text, they are just another hue generated by the exact same light that lives inside of you. They are simply trapped in the exact same profound, terrifying forgetfulness that you are, struggling against the density of their own painful prism.
That changes everything.
It does. What would it actually take for you tomorrow morning to look past the sharp, dangerous edges of their prism, to look past the distortions of their color and actively search for the single, unbroken beam of light that animates you both? It isn't an easy fix. It requires immense vulnerability, but according to this text, it is the only real way to finally clear the muddy waters.
We belong. what your heart belongs to. Is it family? Is it nation? Is it the color that they gave you? Is it tribe or religion? Is it party, name or land? Every circle has a meaning, but there's a greater hand. Da 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 da. Oh yeah. When you know where you belong, you know what you must become. When your love is small and narrow, you may only serve the few. But when your soul awakens to the whole that carries you, you become a stream of power, making life come shining through. I belong to all of life. All of life belongs to me. Every heart and every nation, every soul and every seed. I belong to all of life. Let my actions make it rise. I am here to serve the whole, with love opened in my eyes. All of life, all of life. We belong to all of life. All of life, all of life. Let the whole be lifted high. Family is a blessing. Culture carries memory. Nation gives us shelter. Faith can teach us how to see. But no people stand alone, no. No border owns the sky. Every river finds the ocean. Every breath is passing by. Oh, let it flow now. Let it flow now. Oh, if I only love my corner, I may turn away from pain. If I only guard my people, I may bless another's chains. But the universe is calling for a love that has no wall, a heart that beats for everyone, a hand that serves it all. I belong to all of life. All of life belongs to me. Every heart and every nation, every soul and every seed. I belong to all of life. Let my actions make it right. I am here to serve the whole, with love open in my eyes. I belong to all of life. I will serve all of life. I will love all of life. I will rise. Let my words bring healing. Let my hands bring peace. Let my choices bless the many. Let division find release. I will not shrink my spirit to a name aside a wall. Source power lives within me, and source power holds us all. Yeah, yeah. Play it sweet now, for all of life. For all of life. I belong to all of life. All of life belongs to me. Every heart and every nation, every soul and every sea. I belong to all of life. Let my actions make it rise. I am here to serve the whole, with love opened in my eyes. All of life, all of life, all of life. I belong to all of life. I will serve with love and life. All of life, all of life. No more borders in my heart. All of life. We are one from the start. Yeah. We belong to all of life.